What's up, guys? Back here in the garage tonight to work on my Clausing 5400 series. Going to try to remove the spindle and back gear assembly and hopefully remove the entire headstock so I can work on stripping the paint off and getting it ready to be repainted. So let's get started. So before we get into it, I wanted to show a couple tools that I made to pull the spindle bearings out and pull the races out of the headstock. They're simple, just 2 bolts, a piece of steel, hole drilled through it, long threaded rod, another piece of flat bar steel, just a hole drilled through it, and then a 3.5 inch piece of aluminum, just something I pulled out of the scrap pile, turned it round, and faced it off, so I can pull the actual bearing races out of the headstock. Everything else, all the other tools, is just Allen wrenches and whatnot. So let's get into it. So before we get into it, I'm gonna say that I did go through this, pulled some of it off already to make sure, see what I was getting myself into, and cleaned it up real good. So this stuff is gonna come off real easy. If you're working on a lathe just like this and hadn't had the spindle bearings out recently, it's probably going to be a little tougher than this, but follow the same procedure. First, there's a collar here, set screw. Chances are, if you haven't had yours off recently, that set screw is going to booger up the threads on the back of the spindle, so it's going to be a little tough. I'll lock it in back gear. I really got to fix this pin. It's way too tight. You should be able to move this by hand. Okay, back gear is locked. You're going to take a spanner wrench of some kind. This is not the correct spanner wrench, but it's what I got, and it works. This collar will screw off. This gear will pop off. That was a little tough getting off the first time. Go ahead and pull it back out of back gear. There's a keyway you're going to have to remove. Grab a screwdriver to pop that out. Alright, so you have a spacer that is made to sling oil back into the bearing assembly. That slides right off. These can be a little tricky. I'm actually just using a little hook hanger off the wall to get in there. They're not pressed in there tight, but they are in there pretty good. You just hook in there, work it out. Kind of a awkward, you can't really get a screwdriver in there. That pops off. There's another. This is a cover that keeps another layer of protection to keep gunk from getting down in your spindle bearings. It'd be a little weird to get off. It's not pressed on, but it is a little weird to get off. There we go. That will reveal your back spindle bearing. So there's a collar here with a set screw. I believe when these machines were new, they should have had a brass plug under the screw to keep from damaging the spindle, but if anybody prior has gotten in here and lost that, chances are they drove this set screw into the spindle and it might be a little tough to get off. I got in there when I pulled it apart prior and was able to file off some of the damage done to the spindle out, or OD, so this would slide back and forth freely. Everything else, these should be floating in there. This is pressed on. So what we're going to do, since we're pulling the spindle this way, you're going to put a block of wood or something that will wedge in there on each side to keep this from pulling forward. Alright, I had to stop the camera, find my other block of wood. Here we go. So we're wedging these in here. Nice and tight. And this is where we're going to start to pull the entire spindle out. So I'm going to take my little homemade tool. It's going to rest against the back here. Give me some room to pull. My threaded rod with my little plate on there goes through the spindle. This guy will go up against there. And get my nut on there. Alright, so I got my nut close to where it needs to be. I'm going to position this so I am pulling as straight and centered along the center line of the spindle as possible. And snug that up. Get my wrench, and we're just going to start tightening it up. You may run into an issue if you do this similar to I do, where this nut wants to spin. Alright, keep that nut from spinning. Start tightening down. If you make a tool similar to this, make sure the legs, your bolts here, are spaced out far enough that you're not pressing on the spindle seal. You can hear the spindle slowly pulling out. Change the angle for you guys so you can see better inside the spindle here. You can see this whole seal will actually come out. There's 4 of these total. These seals are all a little bit different. Things tighten up like they are right now, and it feels like if you're not getting anything else done, you can always loosen it up, reposition, and try it again. Things, if you're not pulling it straight, if you're pulling off center, definitely don't want to do that. I almost have it out of the back bearing. It's starting to loosen up. You'll know when you clear that back bearing. You should be about there. Like I said, don't be afraid to reposition your puller. Things tighten up. Ideally, an improvement you could probably make. This machine has an 1 3/8 spindle bore. You could make a little spacer to stick inside the spindle that would go on the inside with a hole diameter or whatever your threaded rod is to keep it centered inside the spindle. I didn't go that route. When I go ahead and install them again, it'll probably be on the to-do list. So that frees that up. But then when I went to reinstall, I took a large piece of tubing to push this bearing back in, this back bearing. And I needed a longer threaded rod. These old bearings, I did clean them a little bit. They are still super nasty. I didn't go to town trying to clean them. All this should start to slide out at this point. You have a cast iron seal at the front. The other 3 are sheet metal. Just work this guy out of there. Catch your pieces so they don't fall down inside. That will remove your whole spindle. that off to the side. This front gear, all three of these pieces kind of interlock. Get your main back gear drive. Then you have your other back gear. And you have the main drive pulley, which has a floating bronze bearing in there. Not sure if it's supposed to float or not, but I can remove it by hand. Those are in pretty bad shape. Alright, so your inner seals, like I said, they're not in there tight. They pull out. This one's in there a little tighter. I'll just use my little block here that I and there are my seals. Now down inside you have your lower back gear assembly. I did not get down there and clean any of that yet, so we'll get into that next. Before I pull these races, I wanted to show the shape that they're in. You can see some kind of imprintation on the back one where the bearings were sitting. I don't know if that's because the machine sat or what happened there, but I don't like it. There is a little bit of scarring inside the races, so they definitely needed to be changed. The front one, again, there's a little pitting. They were dry when I got in here, so they're not in so bad a shape that I couldn't run the machine as is, but this is a full restoration, so I have to change those. You can see down in there the whole back gear assembly and the eccentric arm. So let's get these races out of here. Okay, let's go ahead and remove these races now. You'll have to pull them towards the outside. They are flanged races. So if it's right like that. Again, centered as well as you can. And start pulling. And there we go. So there's our back one. Timken, made in USA, 362B. Again, same with the front. Pull towards the outside. I did pull the other one once. I did not pull this one out. It is a little tougher to get out. You can, after you get some tension on it, if it gets a little tight, give it a couple taps with a dead blow. Just assist it out of there. You don't want to crank down on it so much that you deform the cast iron where they're sitting. The smell of old oil, dried up oil, as that comes out. You can see there's no way of me knowing if these are original or not. But, alright, I got a paper towel. You can just see all the crud that's caked in there. When you put new ones back in, even if you're not refinishing the whole machine, you want to make sure these areas are absolutely spotless. Just one metal chip could cant your bearing, and they wouldn't be in line. So there was a cap down here. I went ahead and removed that. This will reveal the front of your, there's two eccentrics, one in each end of this shaft. There's front and back. And you'll need to reveal that. There's actually an Allen, or a slot in there for the large screwdriver. You don't need to use a screwdriver on that. But you will want to mark, if you want it to go back together as easy as it started, you'll want to mark either the bottom or the top of where it is when you align it. I went ahead and scratched a small line in at the bottom on the front here and on the inside on the back. Alright, so your oil fittings, they'll probably be in better shape than these. These have been painted red and I have the one here with a wooden peg. These just pull out. Your machine, they should be a little tighter than that, and they shouldn't just pull out. You might have taken a pair of needle nose. Go ahead and remove this front plate, 2 flathead screws. It won't come off. This handle just screws off here. Now this is one of those ones you have to be careful with. There is a ball bearing in there, so there's a set screw on the side, but set that in a safe spot so don't lose that. Alright, once we're down in here, going to want to remove first this collar. pulls the back gear in and out. These screws are full of crud, so remove the top of the collar and your other screw, and then your whole arm there will come out. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in some degreaser. Next you have two collars down in here, two shaft collars with a set screw. So those are free to slide. I had to take that one off camera for a second. I got it started. It was in there pretty tough. Just go ahead and tap it out. Alright. That should allow everything to slide freely. You need to use a screwdriver to wedge everything apart. And again, to get this stuff apart, you may need to do some deburring. So now my shaft collar's loose. Shaft collar fell down in, but no biggie. Go ahead and pull that out. That will reveal your eccentric. Really, you only need to take one pin out. Took them both out. Shaft collar. The other tapered pin. Put that whole back here in a degreaser and let it soak. And both shaft collars and your eccentric. We have the other half of the eccentric that needs to come out. Let's go ahead and tap it out. And the back gear is out. Alright, to remove the headstock, we have two Allen wrench bolts right here. That is loosening a clamp that fits down under the bed. We'll remove this clamp. And last, there is using a 9/16 wrench. You got 2 bolts back here that holds the back clamp on. You're not going to be able to get those out until you lift the whole headstock off. Let's see if we can lift this off here. There is a pin driven in the front, just one pin that locates the headstock. So this pin is in there pretty good. You do not want to go wedging on the ways to lift this out. You can't even get a screwdriver under there, so. So this tapered pin, if you look at the manual, that's not even mentioned. So that might have been something that they did for only a few models, but it locates where the headstock should be. I can lift up on it and twist it. That pin actually isn't moving. It's sitting still while the headstock spins on it. And I don't know if it's tapered or if it's just a regular dowel pin. Alright, I'm back. I rigged up some kind of wedge system here, trying to get this off. I did get it to lift up a little bit, so let me get the camera set up here and maybe I can lift this guy off. Alright. Hey there. Got her off. Alright, got the stuff out of the way. Let's lift this off here. And we can see where our belts go down through and all the years of crud that is down in here. It's like a soil sample to see what it was used for all these years. There's metal down on the bottom there. Looks like a lot of aluminum shavings, so somebody was cutting aluminum at one point. Alright, wrapping it up for real, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.